jump in and help along the way.
Enable our partners' growth through scalable and repeatable implementation and technical services.
Taking the partners on their growth journey.
We can really help a partner that's doing a particular kind of project for the first time by working through it with them.
We make it as easy as possible, and typically this is through a one-touch click into our cloud commerce marketplace.
Our services are repeatable. They are fixed scope. There's no unpredictability.
We look to take what is sometimes complex technology solutions, and we essentially make it simple for our partners to leverage those different tools through our package offerings, so that we can come in and work as an extension to your team and deliver those solutions to your customers.
We have the expertise to be able to take on project work for you if you just don't have the bandwidth for it right now, or we can teach you how to do it.
And that's where Pax8 Academy comes in. We've got programs that help the partner in the way they want to learn. We've got all this free on-demand content.
We have a number of subject matter experts keeping up to speed with the latest developments and enhancements, features and functionality.
There's always going to be vendors added, and if it has our approval, that means it's going to serve you.
If you're interested in learning more, simply check out the Pax8 Professional Services Engagement SKU in the Pax8 Marketplace at no cost, and our team will be in touch.
Help propel your business forward right out of the cloud commerce marketplace at Pax8.
What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. Although we're going to deviate a little bit today, we're going to talk about profitability, which is a really fun topic. I like profit. I'll bet you like profit. So we're going to dive into that here in a little bit with Sandy McGrath. We're going to talk about integration and how integration can drive profitability. But before that, let me bring on Matt, and we're going to bring on Robin here in a minute.
What's up, buddy? It's good to see you. I'm only
I forgot my pitch.
Right now.
Sign up for Security Boot Camp because we're trying to fill that thing. It's going to be really.
Let's
fun.
take a sec. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, Dom. I'm tired, and if you are too, of people pitching crap to you and not doing anything other than that to empower or educate you. We're trying to do something different, and so it's basically going to be a more of an immersive experience where we're walking you as if you are a member of a company, going through the very things you sell, going through the very implementations that you do, so that you can understand how that impacts your end clients, and also watch through the lens of maybe some interesting shenanigans playing out as time goes. So it's going to be a little more of a murder mystery theater type model, where we're going to immerse you in it and kind of get you kinesthetically involved in the tech. So hopefully you'll sign up.
You're going to learn a ton about incident response. Just leave it with that.
It's very, very possible that's part of the world. Yeah, definitely. So on to today's show. We're going to try to make this a little bit of a quicker show just because I'm finally going home. Been on the road 16 days. I'm ready to be home for at least a few. So I'm excited about that. So we'll be a little shorter. We're also going to be a little more rhetorical today again. And the reason is we're going to start talking about integration. And we're not going to show you integration. We're not going to dig into it. So if you're here for that, I'm sorry. We're going to be much more talking about why you should integrate, why you should bring your tools to work together and have close functionality, and why you should at least assess things from the perspective of how things interoperate. We're also going to speak about what that does when you're buying MSPs and what that can do to you if you choose to or not to integrate those things. So for all you operations nerds and people that love profit, today's going to be a discussion with the great Sandy McGrath about that topic. And so we're going to get back to a little bit of the roots of the rhetoric for a little bit, only because I think this is really a core way we think about things. Yeah.
I also hear that today's guest is a national treasure.
The national treasure of Canada, yes.
Yeah.
The one and only Sandy McGrath, yes. So that's fun that we get to tease him and he can't say anything right now. So let's go to the brilliant words of Robin Harris.
Are you ready?
I know you may be tired of hearing about AI. AI this, AI that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to add to it. Let's talk about AI compliance. We have new laws coming on the table, or they're already here. We have new threats that we need to deal with. And really, we need to think about how do we use AI in a smart and responsible way to defend against the bad AI. Because the ability for them to turn out these bad things in record speed, humans aren't going to be able to keep up with all of that. So we're going to need tools, and a lot of these tools are powered by AI, but you want to work with the right companies, because when you bring in a third party, you're basically bringing in a partner, especially when you're talking about them playing a critical role in your business. So we're going to have to start using this technology in a way that puts up guardrails against the bad guys. And to do that, please understand that our skill sets, the way they are, not gonna cut it. We've got to level up our skill set so that we can use these tools in a way that's intelligent, effective, and efficient. And putting it into the workflow at the right places, doing the right things, and understanding when you need the human being as the stopgap before you release it or let it out into the wild. The human being needs to be part of the equation. However, a human being that doesn't have the skill set can do more harm than good. So we all have to get into this mindset of, oh, I'm going to have to think different. I'm going to have to do things differently. I'm going to have a whole nother level of situational awareness that wasn't required in the old world. We are going into a new world, and AI is going to be an integrated part of it. And if we don't know how to use it responsibly and effectively, it can become our enemy, and it can become our undoing. So we've got to learn to use it in a way that makes sense and makes sense for our business. It doesn't need to be in every area of our business. It doesn't need to do everything. There are certain things that it just absolutely makes no sense. It's like, why do you need AI in your toothbrush? We don't become enamored by technology where we just want it everywhere doing everything. That's not responsible. That's not mature. A lot of people feel uncomfortable about AI, and there are some really wonderful things about it, but we know there's also a dark side. We're going to have to deal with both. If you can't take advantage of the good side, you're going to miss out. And if you can't defend against the bad side, you are going to be a victim. So we're all going to have to change the way we operate with technology. It's just going to change. It's like when we started having computers. I remember when you didn't have a computer on your desk at home. It was only at work. Now everybody's walking around with one in their pocket, right? We have to adjust. And if we don't know how to play with this technology in a smart way that is good for humanity, good for our businesses, good for our families, good for our children and our community, there are going to be unexpected consequences. And then we'll just get to clean up the mess and whine and moan about it. And we don't want to do that, because cleanups are expensive. They're expensive on a society, they're expensive on families. So we're just going to have to really be strategic and thoughtful and commit to lifelong learning.
Time to level up. Level up.
Man, I'll tell you, me too, Robin. I love listening to hers. I genuinely LOL'd on the toothbrush comment, just so you know. It was fantastic. That was a good time. All right. So I want to introduce Sandy McGrath. We started a conversation about a year ago, and it was destined to be on the game. And here we find ourselves now finally doing it. But it started with this spark of, do people integrate their tools or not? And what does that do to profitability? So Sandy, if you want to introduce yourself and maybe just kick off the topic, and we'll just get rocking with it.
Yeah, so my name is Sandy McGrath. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Run an MSP called Final Frontiers. And like Matt said, yeah, about a year, maybe 2 years ago now, Matt, we had a conversation around what does it look like when your PSA, or if you were to start integrating or looking at different PSAs that had better or more integrations. And we started going down the path of, what if MSPs looked at things like switching to Microsoft Dynamics, and that way it would integrate with Intune, and Copilot was coming, and how does AI read into your SharePoint and your ticketing system if it was Dynamics, and having it all with one license so that you weren't having to manage more and more licenses from all these different vendors. How would that integration work? And ultimately, would it, what was the possibility of saving money on things like training costs, so not having to train with different vendors and all these different tools, but one platform with one source of truth for the training, one licensing cost that covered all of your tools. So that's where the conversation kind of started. And over the last couple of years, we've talked about it a few times, especially now as with Copilot becoming more and more prevalent in society and features and functionalities kind of increasing, was, are we getting to the point where it might be not only more profitable and easier to manage and set up for MSPs and MSP owners, but give them the opportunity to scale up things like their operations. You save a ton of money when you can start having a team of 3 to 5 techs, let's say, compete on a level that 20 techs could do, without having to, burn out your existing awesome tech talent and, compete at a level that you weren't able to even think about before. So that's where this came from and evolved over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And I think, with what we're looking for, at least what I was always looking for as an MSP, was scale. Everything I wanted to speak about was, can I scale this? And I think to your point, Sandy, if I have 20 different tools, they're disintegrated, meaning they haven't been tied together in some form or function, there's no systemic function, then I can't scale that, right? To your exact point, I've got to train on each tool. And I'm not saying that completely goes away when you integrate. That's not my assertion.
Yep.
I am saying that you have a more linear and predictable path with less of the variables out there, right? We have less variables to deal with, and therefore it will be easier and more predictable. But it also goes along kind
and the
of
other
way.
conversation I've been having a lot too was just scale is number one, but like just being efficient and effective in your role with disintegrated tools is really difficult, right? We have these conversations about what tool should I buy, and I always tell people the one you can operate the best with. I don't really care, right? But if you don't use it, it doesn't matter what tool you buy.
Yeah,
you're looking at the tools and wondering, how easy is it not only to use and train up, but what can it do in terms of integrate with your existing tool sets? How much work goes into making that work? And are you measuring that? Are you measuring at how long it takes you to, make up for the lack of integration?
Lack of integrations, right? Yeah.
Are you measuring that? Because if you're not measuring it, you're losing out on profitability there, and you're kind of blind to where your opportunities are to make your business more efficient, more profitable, and that compounds. Like, the more tools you have that's in that boat, where you're not paying attention to, let's say, that 10 to 20% that you're working on, well, that stacks up and gets worse and worse and worse. And then, when you start looking at the bottom line and going, where, if any, of my profitability, where is it gone? Especially in the last 4 or 5 months, when I've seen different industry reports where they're talking about MSPs that are 50, 60% of them either are not profitable or don't even know if they're making money. It's that comes down to, are you aware of your operations and what it's costing you to run it, what it's costing you to keep doing things the way you are? Where's your opportunities for improving that?
And not only what is it costing you to run it, but how effective are you actually being at what you're trying to do at the same time? So now you have the inefficiency of taking more time to do the same task, right? And I'll give you a use case here in just a second. But also, how effective are you? And here's the use case. So there's a asset management platform out there that I use, and I've shown before on the show. And if you think about what it takes to do an asset inventory, okay, now I need to do active scanning. Well, if my active scanning tool is my RMM and my asset inventory was run 0, I now need to go to run 0, put in the stuff I found in an active scan manually. right? And compare that or drive that separate. And then if I'm going to do passive scanning, I need to find however that passive scanning is going to be doing something, or manually comparing those two from different systems. And then again, put that in my asset inventory. But with Run Zero, it has integrations, and it can literally just connect to Intune and find the Intune assets. And it can connect to Azure Active Directory and find the Azure Active Directory assets. And it can connect to X and Y and Z. And so when I talk about integrations, there's really two channels. There is integrations because the products themselves have done integrations to make your life easier. And then there's integrations of I chose to buy, I guess there's three. And there's I chose to buy separate tools and I must write that API layer myself. Right at Iconic, we wrote a lot of the API layer. We did our own integrations. We connected our RMM to Sentinel-1 so that we could detect what's happening in the Sentinel-1 platform. We could decide. So that's the kind of pieces. The third option is being systemic in one platform. Right, a great example, Sandy, you used was having Dynamics maybe as the PSA, my RMM extensibility being things like Intune, endpoint management, all of our assets being that way, everything we use being that way. And so those are kind of my thoughts on integration. Do it yourself, vendor-led integrations, and then entire platform integrations, right? You see the same thing with like ConnectWise, trying to have platforms. The interesting part is they don't always integrate everything, right? And you're left with these things that have been bought and put together but not integrated. So just to demystify integration, it is having the tools systemically do something in a way that's usable. You might have heard it as single pane of glass. You might have had it as like different things. But to your point, Sandy, it's all about gaining back the cost of that time. Like that half hour I would have had to have done once a week to do the asset management or once a quarter or whatever it is now an automated process that I must just then validate for 12 minutes or 10 minutes. And if you expand that across a lot of those tool sets, you find that to be a big efficiency gain and cost and reduction of your REM hours and some of your other ancillary bleeding hours.
Well, and also if you expand that, like if you take that hour-long process and make it a 10-minute process, it's an easier process. So there's more categories of talent that can complete said process.
True story.
So you're also taking something hard, making it easy.
Yeah, that's a huge point of it right there, is like how many things that are running within your business that only one or two of your techs actually understand or are able to complete. Or if you were to look at a list of the tickets in the year, 90% of the time it was completed by the same person because they, maybe documentation wasn't done or there was, or the integrations are created in a way that they're the only ones that are skilled enough to get it. And like Dom said, like I'm not saying before we start getting people coming with pitchforks and stuff that we should all move to Dynamics and Microsoft-centric and that's the be all to end all for everybody. That was just part of the conversation, is like if you look at it, some of the tools could be integrated across your entire business. They all are basically designed to work and connect to each other from the same pools of data. And then future planning was like to Dom's point about the hour to 10 minutes, maybe you can start building a tool that actually does it all and you don't even have to spend the 10 minutes. We're looking for those opportunities, but you have to look at the platforms that you have and the platforms you want to do and go, okay, like where do those integrations, like, is it 100% integrated? Like, can it actually just take this all out? Where are the integration points? Like, you have to account for accounting. You have to account for HR. You have to account for your coding system. Can you build a platform that can connect with all of those different aspects and then take care of all of it? Or are you going to bring in something that can do 4 out of 5 and that fifth one, how much is it costing me to do that on my own? So, like, I think that is a huge part of it is like, not, getting things to the point where they can be done by a tier 1 or a service coordinator or whatever the title necessarily may be. So that way, again, there's your efficiency gains in terms of my highest value assets aren't doing, they're spending it on the most valuable sources of their time, and we're constantly reevaluating everything we're doing so that we can get our lowest paid kind of assets or ones that are a tool like an AI or automation that's taking care of it 100% for $10, $30 a month maybe.
Yeah, you tackle a good point too, because when you start thinking about the systems that we're trying to automate, think back to like a platform like Roost. If I can take a platform like Roost and glue stuff together through automation, right, and have that happen, now I can have a really probably fairly high paid automation engineer that sets those things up, but way less human involvement as those tools become integrated. What's that? Oh, his name's
His
Brandon.
name's
Yeah,
Brandon.
he's brilliant. One of the smartest dudes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But the point is like if you go down that path and see what we can do when we integrate, it's the time savings. That's one big part of it, and that's probably the most immediate impact on your revenue and profitability or at least profitability from that revenue. But I would also argue that your efficacy goes up. Right, the less that I have some undocumented process that one numpty named John can do, and the more it's just an automated process that I can kick off that's going to flow, those processes either fail or they succeed. And if they succeed systemically. And if they fail, they, for the most part, fail systemically. Meaning that I can have an engineer fix the broken process or that something changed, and then everything works again. So when you start doing integrations and automations, you start finding yourself with a higher efficacy that costs less, right? So now I'm better at what I'm doing, and it's going to cost me less, which means if I'm counting assets and then billing for assets, I'm going to count them better. I'm going to have more accurate billing. I'm going to be more real time in my billing. I'm not going to have these broken systemic human processes that must be done to go count assets, to go say I need to update the bill. To your point, for accounting, for integrations, for how I sell it, how I procure it, how I, yeah.
And this isn't an MSP thing, right? Like it's
No.
huge in MSP, and
This is
where
a
we can do it.
business
But
thing.
I just got curious, and so Zapier, and this is all they do is connect and automate stuff for anyone.
Yep.
$5 billion valuation on $310 million in revenue, and they only ever raised $1 million.
Yeah.
So I mean, $310 million in revenue and a $5 billion valuation is insane.
It's a good day.
Yeah,
It's a good day.
An old mentor of mine always told me that like technical excellence didn't mean like you were the smartest person. It was that you could repeat the results and have them come out exactly the same every time. And so like to be technically excellent is to have your automations and your integrations produce the exact same results every single time. And the more that you have, poor integrations or lack of integrations, that creates a disparity in your service level. So then that disparity in your service level comes out in your customer satisfaction, where they're going to get a different support interaction almost every single time. And especially like if you look at a lot of the reports that are coming out, like a lot of workforces now are not wanting necessarily to make that phone call and tell you they have a problem or send an email and wait for the ticket response. They're actually looking for things that they can consume to try and fix it on their own right then and there. So that's a tremendous opportunity where you could look at your existing systems and services, see where your integrations and automations could be to provide a level of service like that. That's a massive opportunity in terms of increasing profitability, reducing costs, and so you don't have to pay for someone. Like maybe you're just not capable of providing a service level of like 15 to 30 minutes response time or things like that. But now maybe you get, you improve your automations and your efficiency. You can have something that's consumable by the client. That could be a massive way for you to increase rates to offer a service level that they, didn't expect or couldn't get, or reduce your costs, or both. And now your profitability is shot up exponentially. Customers that maybe not profitable or difficult to deal with customer service wise before, now they're your best clients.
And that makes me curious. One of the things I was really digging into in my own MSP from an automation standpoint was self-service. So like adding a user, right? Just I have to get all the user details, their manager and their email and all that crap. And then I have to assign that ticket to tech who's going to create a user, probably with some automation, right? So we were looking at, can I just put in a portal, tell me about the new user, and if you're right to say you get to add humans to the company, it just happens. It opens a ticket, the stuff happens, it closes the ticket, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if
and
you
that's
guys
that
have
automation.
seen like Nick Ross put out
where I was going.
He has a really good So he's put out stuff recently with complete automated user addition and removal services. Like if you're looking at an MSP, some of the biggest time sinks that you have are literally user setups, configuring a new system, having it set up, customizing it, transferring data if you have to, depending on how the customers are set up. Some customers, everything's in the cloud. They don't have any local storage. Maybe they don't even have apps, whatever. So maybe those setups are super easy. But if you take that to a spot where like, Intune and it's tied into your procurement process, where to your point is like, they fill in the form. They put in the job title and the group that they're going to be in, automatically creates the user, signs the license, adds them to the group. And handles the procurement, makes the purchase.
Yep.
The serial number from that device is tied into Intune. It's registered. Device goes right to the person's home.
Yep.
They open up
Yep.
the box, sign in, done. Your tech team's never
Yeah.
touched it,
Yep.
right? You may have
Yeah.
never touched it. You can track it all through your PSA, but then
Yep.
your revenue is going to go up because your costs have gone down dramatically there.
Well,
and you're not
and
spending
think
the time
about
on it.
think about that also, what you could also add through integration and automation, right? If I'm now like shipping that laptop, I ordered it from Dell, it showed up on their doorstep, it got their information, it was registered to bill, but at the same time, it kicked off an API to Printful, and it ordered 4 new shirts and that new mug and a really cool, awesome gift for that person, got that shipped to them. So you can automate and integrate the systems to bring even higher business function and value
There's
adds to
another
your client
whole
that are hard to
company
replicate.
that fulfills that piece, like the whole employee welcome gift as an API service, right? So there's integrations
Yeah.
for anything, which is, and if you're shipped a laptop and UPS calls in and says, hey, it's here, and you don't see it in 2 days, you could fire an alert. Be like, where the hell is this machine?
Yeah.
Right? There's so much you could get
Yep.
into if you really dove through this.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think that
you can
drives
build
the
it out,
scale we were
totally.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that drives the scale we
it
were
does
talking
lead
about
to your
earlier.
scale. Because
Yeah.
if you have your system like that tuned, can you imagine all your clients signing up for that? You save hundreds of hours, let's say, every quarter. That's hundreds of hours that your techs are able to work on other things to improve. So then, as you're giving them opportunities to train and develop their skills, take on projects or work that they've never had before, now you've
Yeah.
got time to do those things. They can work
You-
on, increasing profitability and revenue in your business.
I'll give you a
Yeah,
great example. I have a direct example. I'm in a pack, and it is for a firewall vendor that is also doing a lot of services. And it was interesting because they rolled out a network detection and response function, so that you could start doing, some of your ladder 13s and some of the NIDS, NIPS, HIDS, HIPS stuff in CIS. And so it was interesting because what came up was, we don't have the skill set to use this. We don't have the time at this time to learn it, but we need to do this because our customers are starting to ask for it and we are starting to sell it. And so you have this kind of universal problem of MSPs are usually at a high level of utilization, right? That's the goal. You try to put people at a high level of utilization, but those humans, the meat assets, have to learn more to be able to offer new services
Meat
and have to be able to
asset.
do those integrations. Is that okay? Meat asset. That's what I'm going with.
You
Wow.
coined it.
But those meat
Spoke-
assets need
spoken like a
time.
true AI overlord.
It's fair. Of course, we love our AI overlords. But the point is that as you start seeing that, finding those times by gaining efficiency inside your organization, especially if those costs start to return value to you, even with the same W-2 cost, you can now take that W-2 cost and start to train them on new things that actually take that human element. And I'll call out John Street, because I was sitting with John in Germany last week, John Street, our founder, and he likes to push my buttons, I think. He just enjoys messing with me. And I was talking to him about my vision of the future for AI and integration and some of these things. He said, Matt, I know all that. I don't care. And it was a little off-putting. But what he said was, Matt, if you're not talking about the human element in the future and how we can bring the value of the human element back to things as we add AI, as we add automation, as we add systemization, you're failing. Like, how do you bring the human element back in? Some of that's the stuff like shipping me the laptop with the shirts, but ultimately it's how do we find value out of what the humans need to do? And I think integration allows time to focus on those human elements and the things we can bring. Deeper consultations about their business, more being involved, more things in that way. And as we find those things, we can automate and systematize them from integration methodologies. So anyways, but yeah,
100%.
it was a hard challenge.
If you look at traditionally what you're trying to do with your service desk team, which is like your billable utilization is up and you keep it at a certain percentage, but you have a built-in amount that you knew was going to be for things like training or admin time or lunches, breaks, stuff like that. Now, I've seen the trend where the non-billable time is going up, but there's a story to tell in that. And that's because you're able to invest the time. Like, they're still here for the 8 hours, but maybe they're only doing 6 hours out of the day of technical work or less, but then more of it's going into training, or more of it's actually actioning that thing that they talked to the person about on the phone when they talked about a problem they were seeing at the business. And now they actually can sit down and take action on it and put together like a case of like, well, I think we could do this for the business. And then you present that back to the client, whether it's, a follow-up or quarterly business review or something that comes back as like, hey, we actually, invested the time because we could now, right? We have things, we're working on efficiency and automation and integrations as much as possible. And what that's doing is as a business, maybe it does look like our tech's billable utilization's going down. That's not a bad thing necessarily, because maybe that if you're keeping an eye on that billable utilization is being reinvested of the human time back into your clients. And that's a whole other separate conversation about MSPs becoming more strategic partners with their businesses, the clients' businesses, and understanding
100%.
their business almost as well as the client does, so that you can sit there and see things even when you're not dealing with that customer, so that you can provide proposals or things that's happening in their industry or in the world that you've seen at other places that you think would help them. You start bringing that stuff back to the customers, they're not getting rid of partners that are helping them with their biz dev or their revenue growth.
You know what you're doing? You know what you're doing there? You're integrating in their business, which is what we've said we're
100%.
doing this whole freaking time. You're getting deeper into how they make money, how they're going to grow, how they're going to pivot, how they're going to change. And we've begged for that seat at the table, yet we don't often pull our bellies up to it. Right. And I think this is that point of you're actually now being a part of their organization. And I've seen this before too, is if you're now deeper into, hey, do you know that First American Title will pay you 23% instead of 20% if you can get these three things in place from a scale, like getting ahead of it and understanding what makes them money, right? And this came up I'm going to be speaking at TitleCon next week in Vegas, a week and a half from now in Vegas. And it's that conversation of being very deeply integrated into how they work and what they need to do, and helping them get their own integrations of their tools and integrations of their workflows and processes and things from
Those
that
are
space.
actual business results. Like you've taken IT from a keep me alive to a help me grow and succeed, right? And hit goals. And that's a very
You're not a
different
utility
conversation.
anymore, right?
Right.
Like if all you're doing is fixing the systems and you're plugging in the cables and things like that's fine. There's no knock against anybody. If that's what you're doing and that's what you want to do and that's what your business is, that's great. But what I'm saying is like that ultimately leads to like you're looked at as a cost. Whereas if you're being looked at as somebody that's helping them with revenue generation or reducing their costs by keeping things running, and then you're providing things like, hey, we think that this could help. Hey, thanks for letting us know, like this is where you're trying to go as a business. This is what we think would be important to you to invest in, or this is the technology or services going forward. It's not just putting the fires out or dealing with the problems right then and there. It's like, hey, I'm looking at your business too in a year's time, 3 years time. And I think that these things could help or be important. And if you're in the latter and you're being looked at as a cost, then ultimately they're going to look at which person's going to provide that at the lowest cost. But if you're
that's
sitting there as a
commoditization by
partner,
definition.
and part of the integration and automation part of it is literally setting up your own MSP so that you can invest in your people, so that your people then can invest into your clients. Right? More time that you're taking away from them having to turn the screws and plug in the cables, as I said, the more time they're sitting there and actually looking at the customers and going, this is what they do. This is what's happening maybe in their industry. And that not every tech is capable of doing that, but that's fine. Again, you're freeing up more time with your integrations and automations so that you can identify those opportunities or people, focus on them, or give the super hyper technical people who only want to deal with technical and they don't like humans. That's fine too. Great. Now they've got more time to go work on the technical stuff that they actually
make more automations,
or they go run the automations.
Exactly.
One or the other. Like you can kind of set them off on their own paths. And that's why like focusing on the automations and integrations with your tools and your business is so important.
But like the little stuff, if you have more time in the business and you have one tech go on vacation and the other one gets a cold, nobody has to panic. Right? So there's even these tiny little benefits of just having things that work.
Well, now, how many times have we had clients that bought two different kinds of software to do the same jobs within their own teams? And it's like one guy goes on a vacation and all of a sudden your production environment stopped because the one person that was dealing with this project, that client's called in, but nobody could actually answer the question because the techs that are still there, they use a completely different platform, doubles the cost, doubles the time. Now you've introduced customer service and customer relation issues because they're pissed off because they can't get access to, whatever changes or work they're doing. They're going to start looking elsewhere too.
Well, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about this. How do you start to integrate? Right? Let's talk just if we were a team, we have an MSP that we've maybe put together, but we haven't integrated fully. How do you start? We'll go around the room. Let's start with you, Sandy. What would be one of your first steps that you would do if you were just coming from nothing to do a deeper integrations and automations? Where would you start?
I think you have to kind of question everything and look at all the different entities within your organization, what they need to do the best job they can. So like for HR and accounting and, services, like if you were to do the best you could, what tools and services do you need to provide an exemplary level of service
or even what business function? Yeah, right. Like, what do you need? Well, I need to close the books by the 2nd of the month. If I get 100%. Bills in, I need to have by the 2nd. So like that kind of business needs. So I love that you start, Sandy, with the actual business use case and needs to make design elements of what I wanted to do. Dom, what are your thoughts? How do you start? What's one of the first steps you'd make? So Sandy's going to find out what business needs to succeed in each business unit.
So we've got our business functions, right? So I'm going to go get user stories. I want to understand how people do what they do to keep the machine running, because that's really going to let me uncover opportunities that are repetitive or error prone or just a waste of time.
Sure.
And then I can take that into technical decisions.
And that can be a ticket review. That can be actual working with those users and talking about what they do to do their day, back to Sandy's point. And then for me, what I would do is I want to know what tools I'm already using. Right. And I really think that, me, I'm all assets, and I obviously think asset inventory of the physical assets, but the software asset inventory, like just what do we use? When I did this with Iconic, with Matt Topper and Jason Farmer and Tony Miller, I think we found like 164 applications that we were using to deliver our services across our org. I mean, we had 170 people, which is like one application a human, right? Like it's ridiculous. So I want to start with like, what are we doing? And then I want to compare that back to those functions that Sandy found and compare those back to those user cases of what they're doing, of what Dom's talking about, right? Like, okay, what did you use this tool for? Why did we pay for this? Is this one-off? Do I use it every day? How do I use it? What's my business case by business function? Now that you have those,
how long does it take you to use it? And how long does it take you to actually action what comes out of it? Like there's a few different parts of it, but it's like, that's why I think it's important if you look at it, like if you're saying you're going to start a new organization or you've onboarded a new MSP, let's say you're going down the mergers and acquisitions route and you're looking at the tools.
That's exactly where my head's going.
It's like, if we look at what everybody has within the organization to provide what they do for their job and their job roles, let's start off by looking like, is there one tool that can take care of all of it, right? If there is, what comes out of it? What can it do? What's the quality that comes out of it? Is the quality able to reproduce or do what we're asking it to do? Great. Then we can filter out like all these other costs and services, integrations, because part of it is like, maybe the profitability and cost is not doing integrations at all. Maybe it's like, we actually don't have integrations because the integration's creating extra amounts of work or services. To Dom's point earlier, that like we actually only do like once, maybe ever. Maybe the answer is like it's not done at all. Like depending on the integration,
it doesn't serve the business case potentially.
Like it actually doesn't. It doesn't help anybody. Like we're doing it to do it. Like there's lots of times where even in the help desk, there's things that are done that don't actually need to be done because
you mean the why matters,
value or purpose.
This is crazy talk. Crazy talk, Sandy McGrath.
So we've now found business like cases, what the business needs, then you can look at the tools and start from there and go like, okay, like these are the tools. This does what? Okay, this is what's going to come out of it. Is what comes out of it going to help serve our business? If it's not, okay, and there's nothing like that we're aware of that can do 100%. Okay, let's go. Like, can we do 80 to 90?
Then the next question is,
what can we do?
Do they integrate natively? Is there an integration natively with my other core systems, right? Do I already have a plugin that I can go into Rumble and put in my, Intune app secret and have that tie in, right? Or
do I need a third-party integration tool?
Exactly. And that's the next question. Is like, can I tie them together? Is there an application programming interface, right? Is there an API? And as you start going down that path, this is the method of not completely redesigning, right? This is taking the tools I already have with contractual obligations I may already paid for 3 years, whatever it may be, and saying, how can I get more out of them? Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't call that you can't automate something you don't have a process for. So my next step would be identifying the process to use them as they sit, to use these tools to accomplish that business function as they sit. I go to my RMM, I deploy these 5 things, I then go here and create this user, I then associate like those steps. And as you then do that, you can start saying, where can I bring these steps together in a logical path that I don't have to have humans involved in, right? And the more that I start assessing that and saying, okay, do they integrate? If no, do they have an API, and can I write an integration, or do I even have the skill set to do that? If those answers are no, that's when I now need to reevaluate what would I need to solve this process, right? This goes back to what you were saying, Sandy, of now we want to see, does this even meet that need? And do I even need to do it? If the answer is yes to the second and not to the first, I'm probably buying new tools, right? Like, or I'm changing tools in some form or fashion or process.
Or it's giving you an opportunity as a leader to have a really insightful conversation with your team to get an understanding of what they're doing. Like, there's a lot of people that talk about like poor leadership and poor management because the management and the leadership don't understand what's happening, or they're tuned out of it because they're doing other things and they don't understand. It's like, here's your opportunity to really dig in, feel someone's pain, understand what they need, and tell them, like, look, I want to support you to do the best you possibly can. And I genuinely mean that. Like, I want you to do super well. I want to have like awesome employee reviews. Tell me what you need to do that, and take that through every part of your business and look at it. And that's why I said like the question everything part of it. And you can extend that out to like, if you want to do business development with your clients, like how many clients do we deal with on a run of a day where the leadership that you're dealing with doesn't understand what it costs their business to not solve a problem because they don't understand what the processes are or the people doing them are dealing with in the run of a day. Right. So now you can go back to them and say, hey, like, as your strategic partner, like, I think the most important thing is we actually do like a process review or a role review so that you actually can understand what your own staff is doing within your business. Right. Like, you're not having technical conversations. Right? Yeah. Like, you're having very serious business conversations with your clients. They're going to, if you're there and you're at that level and you can do that, you're a trusted partner.
The other thing I wanted to tackle, there was a comment on LinkedIn real quick. I just want to, they took the time to comment. I'd love to put it up there. But they said their way they would approach it: an inventory of assets, create a comprehensive inventory of hardware, software, and network devices, and then current configurations, document that, and then review contracts, understand what you've promised to do, vendor contracts, service agreements. So I think the point that they were making is like, to your point, we have to have the business function. We have to understand what we've agreed to do. I think all those pieces, and try to have that as a bit of a true north, right, as we're doing this. The other piece I wanted to touch on, we only have a little bit of time left, is the integration or not integration of companies you acquire. There's an argument that some MSP roll-ups were buying companies, not changing them, leaving everything the same, ruling to EBITDA, managing that organization in that way. And we chose to go a different path, right? We chose to go down the path of absolutely integrating everything, doing it the same way, having a general manager in each org, having underneath that a service manager, having underneath that IAs that run teams, and having a procurement specialist, and having right? And then once we started doing those things and integrating, we could move roles to corporate. We could move roles to a core space. Like, hey, central services can now do all of those patching efforts, and we don't need people in each org doing it. And so you actually start getting some of those efficiencies of scale that you think you're going to get, and also normalization of the experience, manageability. Like, McDonald's doesn't have McDonald's and go, nah, bro, go be you, do your thing, enjoy, tell me what happens. They say, here's how we do McDonald's stuff, right? And then you do it that way. And there's that aspect of it. So I just wanted to touch on the integration doesn't just stop at the tools. Integration is how does this organization function? And Dom, you and I have been down this path even at PAX 8, where two separate teams have worked on the exact same stuff in different ways in vacuums and not integrated into the way they're trying to do it. And then we went down this, objectives and key results framework, so we can start tying those to the same outcomes. We can see where there's duplicity. So I just don't want people to think integration only means technical. Integration means how the teams function. Integration means how we bring things together. It's operations. It's all of those pieces. And the interesting thing about that PAC meeting I was in is every one of those humans is deeply, deeply integrated. The way they think, the way they talk about products, the way they do it, they only focus on the integration. How does this interoperate with other things? Can I mess with it? Can I use APIs on it? Can I change things? So anyways, beating this thing to death. But the argument I want people to take away, and then I'll let the great national treasure that is Sandy McGrath get to that point of closing this out is, if you're not focused on the integration and operational efficiencies, the commodity war will cost you more and you won't survive it. And you certainly won't be able to pivot to the new value propositions that will be needed in a future that is so very normalized. If everybody's on AAD or Entra or Intune, they all become very normalized. That becomes commoditizable by script and automation and things that you need to be working towards, in my opinion. So, all right, sorry. I'll give it back to Dom to get us closed out, and I'm going to head home. So love you, Sandy. It's great seeing you. Thank you for being on. I'm going to drop.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Matt's got a plane to catch. He's going to get out of here. So we're going to do things a little different today. Sandy is going to give us the play of the day. So Sandy, you've got 60 seconds to recap the show and give us the one key takeaway that the audience needs.
I think the key takeaway is to look at the opportunities within your organization to give people opportunities to grow their careers, help you grow the business by ultimately helping free up their time and increasing automations and integrations, save money, save complexity, provide a better service to your customers. There's all these different opportunities depending on how your business functions or wants to run, that those could all apply to you. It just depends on how you want to give yourself the opportunity to take advantage of them. And if you don't start now, you never will. So you might as well at least put in the effort to try now and get the benefits of the integrations and the review of your own business. You beat the clock.
Game over.
All right, that might be a record for play of the game. So nobody tell Matt, but I think that was a record for play of the game. Thank you so much for joining us, Sandy. This has been a fantastic episode, and I love the advice. Right, start exploring this, start diving in, start to see what you can do in your own business to build integration. That is our show for the week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time, same place, same time. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of that jazz, and we'll see you then.